Thank you very much, Hamid, and let me just repeat once again my thanks for the honor of being with you again and sitting on this podium with our dear friends and colleagues, especially our dear friend Jamal Noor Sarbut. Thank you again to everyone who has been involved with this wonderful program. One of the most memorable encounters in the history of Sufism is surely the first meeting of Shams-i Tabrizi and Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi. Although there are numerous versions of the story of this encounter, probably the most important account is the one that Shams himself recorded in his discourses, or maqalat, where he says that he spoke as follows to Rumi. The first thing I spoke about with him was this: how is it that Bayazid did not need to follow the example of the Prophet and did not say, "Glory be to thee," or "We worship thee"? And Rumi completely understood the full implications of the problem and where it came from and where it was leading to. It made him intoxicated on account of his purity of spirit, for his spirit was pure and cleansed and it shone within him. I realized the sweetness of this question from his intoxication, though I had been previously unaware of its sweetness. Franklin Lewis, who has analyzed this passage at length, has provided a persuasive interpretation of the way that both Shams and Rumi followed the Prophet. Unlike Bayazid Bistami, Shams returns again and again to this question of following the Prophet, and the case of Bayazid apparently provided the touchstone by which Shams could gauge the inner orientation of others and test whether a fancy for mystical speculation or indulgence in antinomian behavior outweighed a person's love and respect for the spiritual attainment of the Prophet. End of quote. Lewis is certainly correct in pointing to the central importance of the concept of following the Prophet, mutaba'at, in the mystical thought of Shams-i Tabrizi. Omid Safi has discussed the likelihood that Shams even criticized Muhyiddin ibn Arabi for insufficiently demonstrating this quality. Yet, I must confess that it has always seemed to me there was something more to say about this episode. Perhaps it is the occurrence of the word for intoxication or drunkenness, sukr, which Shams uses twice to describe the reaction of Rumi to the example of Bayazid. The appearance of this kind of intoxication suggests that there is some excess or overplus of meaning that does not quite fit into the conventional notion of devotion to the example of the Prophet. Despite the fact that Shams criticizes Bayazid on a number of occasions, one retains a lingering suspicion that there was something about the boldness of Bayazid's ecstatic claims and the audacity of his statements that called forth a response of equal audacity from Shams-i Tabrizi himself. Lewis is quite aware that most Sufis would have been able to explain the sayings of Bayazid as ecstatic sayings or shatriyat, which should not necessarily be taken at face value or condemned as blasphemous insults against God or the Prophet. He adds that other Sufi scholars were critical of the ecstatic expressions of Bayazid and Hallaj, which they explained away as the products of intoxication that could safely be disregarded. Yet, as previously mentioned, it's striking that Shams described Rumi's reaction to this question as also being a kind of intoxication. Does that mean Rumi's reaction was also invalid, or was he responding to some deeper meaning in Bayazid's expressions? These questions require further exploration. It's well known that outrageous expressions like Bayazid's Subhani, glory be to me, or Hallaj's even more startling phrase, I am the truth, ana al-haq, have often been classified as shatriyat or ecstatic sayings. It's important to point out that these sayings are not necessarily to be dismissed as the ravings of lunatics, although there are undoubtedly some who hold this opinion. But to the contrary, there's abundant evidence to indicate that these ecstatic sayings have often been considered to be deep and genuine mystical insights which unfortunately cannot be understood by the ordinary person. It's noteworthy that an authority of the stature of Junayd composed a commentary on the ecstatic expressions of Bayazid, which fortunately has been preserved by the early Sufi scholar Abu Nasr al-Siraj in his book of Glimmerings on Sufism, Kitab al-Lumaq fi Tasawwuf. Notice the title that Siraj gave to this section, "The Commentary on Ecstatic Expressions and Words that are Externally Found Repulsive, though they are internally correct and well-founded." While it is true that Siraj had to debate with the theologian Ibn Salam, who objected to Bayazid's sayings, Siraj argued that his opponent had misunderstood the words of Bayazid in an overly literal manner, but that these ecstatic expressions require that one know the inner knowledge and experience that gave depth and substance to these otherwise strange expressions. Indeed, Siraj refers to Junayd's commentaries as a tafsir, a word normally reserved for commentaries on the Quran. Other interpreters, like Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, basically accepted the validity of the insights expressed in ecstatic sayings, although al-Ghazali was seriously concerned about the possibility of misinterpretation by the less informed listener. Ghazali distinguishes two kinds of shat. The first kind consists of what he calls broad, extravagant claims made in passionate love of God Most High, in the union that's independent of outward actions, so that some go to the extent of claiming unification, rending of the veil, contemplative vision of God, and oral conversation with God. And then they say, we were told such and such, and we said such and such. In this they resemble, he says, Al-Hussein ibn Mansur al-Hallaj, who was crucified for uttering words of this kind, and they quote his saying, "I am the truth." Al-Ghazali goes on to say that this kind of talk is very dangerous for the common people because they lose their chance for salvation since they think that a purified soul that has attained spiritual states can dispense with religious duties. The consequences of such an antinomian interpretation are so severe that Al-Ghazali concludes that the killing of him who utters something of this kind is better in the religion of God than the resurrection of 10 others. The second kind of shat he describes as that which is unintelligible to the listener, regardless of whether it's merely confused babbling or something which the speaker comprehends but cannot articulate properly. Since this is bound to be interpreted arbitrarily, it's not permissible to express such things publicly. In this exposition, Ghazali's main concern is to prevent ordinary people from being misled by difficult or strange sayings, even though he implicitly regards the genuine kind of shafiyat as valid for those who can understand. In the most mystical sayings, however, he sees a real danger of antinomianism. Other Sufi writers, such as Ruzbahan al-Baqli, have given much more extensive positive interpretations of shafiyat, as we can see from his important commentary on ecstatic sayings, which is available in Arabic and Persian. And it is well to remember that Fariduddin Attar, among others, has also given a spirited defense of the sayings of Bayazid. Now, it is true there are numerous passages in the discourses of Shems-i Tabrizi where he criticizes Bayazid's saying, "Glory be to me, Subhani," for various reasons. As indicated in the first example given above, one reason was that Bayazid appeared to be claiming a station beyond that of the Prophet Muhammad, which would be a form of blasphemy. Even if this is a form of intoxication, Shams remarks that it is incompatible with the true following of the Prophet. But this is not the only reason that Shams gives for criticizing Bayazid. Shams on other occasions observed that Bayazid did not have the capacity to keep secrets. This is the well-known criticism of having a shallow cup, tang zafi.